Welcome to the Empire Builders Podcast. Dave Young here alongside Steven Semple. And as we always do, Steven, wait a minute. You didn't whisper anything in my ear during the countdown.
No, I didn't this time.
We're going into this blind. I have no idea what we're going to talk about.
I didn't this time, but there's one thing I sort of just wanted to mention before we got into it is, we're north of 156 episodes. Like I think this is 157 or 158. And when you think about it,
isn't that crazy?
It is crazy. We've crossed the 3-year mark.
Yeah.
And for you and I, we've not missed a week in that 3 years.
I'm amazed. Like that's double the number of birthdays I've had, at least.
I wanted to recognize that because I was looking, when I was doing the preparation and looking at this, I went, wow, 3 years. That's like quite amazing. When we started this adventure, I knew we had committed to a year and here we are still at it, which I think is pretty cool. It is.
I don't have any stats handy, but I know that podcasting is, this is one of these things that is like, oh, this is going to be fun, right? It's going to be fun to do a podcast. And it is. My participation in it is a lot of fun because I show up, you do a countdown, and I chat. But I know that it's a heavy lift.
Yeah.
And people that thinking that they're just going to start podcasting, unless you're just going to start, your own live morning show without any, back end production, it's not an easy thing to do. And you've got a whole team working behind the scenes.
Yeah, there's you and I, and then we have an outsourced person who does the production, and then Dylan Bernier turns all the stuff in the shorts and whatnot, and then Matthew Burns and Gary Bernier get it all posted to the social media. And I'm going to say, if this group of people were not working on it, this would not still be going today. And I think last I looked at the stats, most podcasts, I think, are like 10 or 12 or 14 episodes or something like that.
That's as far as you get.
That's as far as you get. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, this is a grind. This is more work than I thought it would be. And things along that line. So
you're like, I'm going to go back to grad school. And oh God, what was I thinking?
Yeah, exactly.
I started podcasting in like 2010 and got 30 episodes in before I gave up.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think it was just because the shine came off the shiny object for me.
Right.
But, and nobody knew what a podcast was in 2012. So, it was,
yeah. So I just want to, thank the team, and just recognize this milestone. But on to the reason why people actually have tuned in is not to hear us chat back and forth.
It's not?
Well, it's not about that. It's not about praising ourselves. What we're going to talk about today is a game called Yahtzee.
Yahtzee. I grew up with Yahtzee. I mean, Yahtzee's been around for a long time.
Sure has. Yeah.
And I never played it till I think after I got married. My wife was really big into Yahtzee.
Oh, is that right?
And, I'm in my 30s before I actually experienced Yahtzee.
Okay, cool.
But
That's cool.
and then it became, of course, it became an app. You can just do Yahtzee against your phone all day long if you want
to. Everything's an app now, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So Yahtzee was created by Edwin Lowe on April 19th, 1956. It went on to be sold to Milton Bradley for $23 million in 1972. That's like $150 million in today's dollars.
That's a big cash out back then.
Yeah. And at its peak, Yahtzee was selling more than Monopoly. So it really, really did well. And the origin of Yahtzee goes actually back into late 1920s, early 1930s. And Edwin Lowe is a door-to-door toy salesman. He's an immigrant. Okay. His father is a rabbi. And one of the things he learned is to be successful, you have to be confident and determined. And one of the things he does is he stumbles across a community night, and he saw this gambling-style game called Beano, where you would put beans on a board, and when you got it in a row, you would yell out, Beano. So it was easy to learn, and it was fun to play, and friends got excited. And a friend of his got excited when he was playing it, and instead of yelling Beano, he yelled bingo.
He was confused.
And Lowe decided to package the game as bingo. So take the game Beano, print up cards, make the little pieces, and sell it as bingo.
Does this predate bingo as we know it, or is this just a ripoff of the word bingo?
Well, Beano predates bingo.
Really? Okay.
Yes. And then his friend yelled out bingo, and he packaged it as bingo. He took the game Beano, packaged it as bingo.
And is that the bingo that we know
Today, yes.
today? I would much rather go to a bingo parlor than a Beano parlor. Just saying.
You're just saying, yeah.
Especially if you're in Florida and who knows what all the old people playing Beano have been eating.
Here we go.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead with your little story.
So in 1930, he sets up his own toy company and they mass produce bingo cards. And at its peak, he has like 2 factories making these cards. And bingo really took off because it was this low cost and got deeply accepted in church communities. But it quickly got imitated and the market got flooded. And he tried to trademark the name bingo, but he wasn't able to trademark it. He even tried to get the rights to it. He goes through like 40 lawyers. It's just not possible.
Well, so bingo was a word in the vernacular then, right? It must have been, right?
Must
if that guy
have been.
yelled out bingo. Yeah,
Must have
okay.
been.
It just wasn't a game yet, and he couldn't trademark it. Huh. Okay.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. And I was never able to find out why. It was just, he tried over and over again. It wasn't possible. So he needs to find a new idea. So he starts remaking old games because now we're into World War II, and he creates little mini versions of games that can be used by soldiers during the war, like little tiny chess games, little tiny checkers games, like any game that he could find that he could kind of miniaturize. That's what he's doing. But these aren't new or unique, and he still wants something new or unique. And it's 1954, and he still hasn't come across any of that. He really wants to find a game he can own, and he finds it. Here's how the legend goes, and it's an unconfirmed legend, but here's how the legend goes. He's hanging out with some upper crust folks who are on a yacht playing a dice game. Turns out it's a Canadian couple that invented this dice game that they called the yacht game because they played it on their yacht. There's versions of this game that has been played over the decades called Yam and Craig and Cheerio. We're not even certain that this rumor is true in terms of how he came across the game.
Stay tuned. We're going to wrap up this story and tell you how to apply this lesson to your business right after this.
Social post?
Yep.
Grinding it out?
Yep. Content treadmill.
Are you getting hearts and likes?
Sometimes, just a little bit.
You're consistent?
Daily, just like my coffee.
They're entertaining?
I think so.
So?
You think it's worth it?
Don't know. Ask the host.
This podcast host?
Yep. Oh, and you can book your free starter session on this podcast website.
Take it away, Dave.
Let's pick up our story where we left off, and trust me, you haven't missed a thing.
I used to play a game as a kid that my dad played called Ship's Captain and Crew.
Okay.
And it's a game played with 5 dice. You roll all 5, and it always reminded me of Yahtzee.
Okay.
And maybe that's why we didn't play Yahtzee, because Ship Captain Crew is a much simpler game. You don't have to, there's no scorecard. You're not keeping track of things. It's just one round.
Interesting. Okay. Hold that thought.
Okay.
So again, this is a rumor in terms of how he came across the game, and it's unconfirmed in history whether he made a deal to buy the game from this couple or what happened here. But so now he needs a name that he could trademark and own. So he decided, I want to take this game and I want to be able to trademark and own it. So instead of the yacht game, it's Yahtzee.
Yeah.
And he could own that name. So now he's got a name for his game. And in order to make really good money and reoccurring income from the game, he made some modifications. Now, one of the modifications he made is he added cups to make the game a little bit differently for rolling the dice, and scorecards.
Yeah.
Because what's great about scorecards, you need to buy and replace them.
Sure you do. You need little tablets. Yeah.
Yeah, but the other thing that he noticed when he had observed bingo is there's this magical shared moment when you yell out bingo.
Mm-hmm.
So what did he add to the game? You yell out Yahtzee.
It's when you get all 5 numbers?
Yeah.
Or 6 numbers? It's not the winning yell.
Right, but there's still this moment where you get to yell out Yahtzee, which is like yelling out.
Throws a little adrenaline into the game.
Right, which he saw from bingo. So he took that idea from bingo. He took the idea of the cards from bingo. He saw this other game that was out there, named it Yahtzee because of what he had learned from bingo. He needed a name he could control, and then created these little scorecards so that there was ongoing recurring revenue from the game. So you can see all of this came from his learning around around bingo.
Yeah.
So he launches it, and it doesn't do well because it's hard to describe the game in marketing. He found it very,
Sure.
very hard to describe. So what he realized he had to do was get it into people's hands so that they could experience the game. That's what he figured what he had to do.
I feel like I've heard this story before.
Like how many times?
This is the strategy. Get people playing your game.
Yeah. So what he did is he started doing these Yahtzee parties, and he would give people the game to hold these parties, and eventually got enough people knowing and liking the game that after 3 years, the floodgates open. And he's like selling like 9 million units of this game. And actually, as I said, at the peak was more than Monopoly. And then along comes 1972, and he sells the game to Milton Bradley for a nice tidy sum of $23 million, which is like $150 million today.
And then I hope that he got invited back onto the yacht where he stole the intellectual property of the actual game and said, look what I did.
But here's the interesting thing. That rumor, which if it's true, he had actually paid them for the game. Not a lot of money,
okay.
But he did actually pay them. So the rumor is he saw this game and he actually did buy it from this couple. It's an uncertain part of history. If it's true, he actually did purchase the game from the couple. That's the good part. So let's believe all of that happened. But here's the interesting thing. There's a couple of really interesting lessons in here. And first of all, to me, what was really interesting is when you look at what he did with the game Yahtzee, all of that came out of his learning from bingo. I need a name.
Yeah.
The card's a really good idea because that had been the revenue generator for the card. So he created a scorecard. The shared experience of yelling something out, that little adrenaline hit, like all of that, like it's really interesting when you line it all up. All of that came from his learning, from his experience with bingo. And I think too often we don't transfer this learning forward. So I thought that was really cool.
It just shows that even with a game, I think probably especially with a game, you've got to factor in the personal experience of someone playing the game, right? There have to be these moments, even in something like Monopoly, right? I think one of the things that keeps bringing us back to Monopoly is these little dopamine moments that happen every time you roll the dice.
Yeah.
Right. Oh my gosh, I went to jail. Oh my gosh, I got a chance to buy Park Place. Or, oh crap, I landed on Boardwalk with a hotel on it.
Right.
Right now I'm done. And so there's just moment after moment. And with a dice game, there's always a fun moment when you see what happens with the dice. But when you add that little tiny bit of dopamine about yelling something out.
Well, it's also kinesthetically anchors it because you're actually doing something physical as well.
Yeah.
But the other thing I thought that was really interesting is he's clearly very observant because it was the bingo part that he observed and it was the Yahtzee game that he observed. Now, again, he did little minor modifications to them, but what it showed us, he was out looking around. But the key one is this whole idea of demonstration. In even non-game products, we've come across things where people have had to demonstrate the value. They had to get it in people's hands or get people seeing it. And I even find when I'm working with business-to-business companies, it's about what's our opportunity to demonstrate our expertise? How do you demonstrate the game? How do you have it being felt and experienced rather than just talking about it, especially if it's something that's very difficult to explain in marketing? I thought that was really, really cool that he landed on you know what, I got to do these parties and I got to get just this game in people's hands.
It reminds me of just a month or so ago, a couple of people at Wizard Academy are trying to get a new game off the ground.
Oh, is that right?
And it's a game. It's got these moments, but I feel like it's a game where you have little almost like frisbees, like the little tiny frisbees that they use in frisbee golf.
Yep.
These are just little ring toss sort of frisbees, and you play it kind of like bocce ball.
Okay.
You throw a target ring out, 10, 15 feet away, and then you try to get your rings closer to the target than your competitor.
Okay. Yeah.
Right. And everybody's got like 4 or 5 rings, and then you pick up all the rings and start again.
Right.
And if I had to say it was missing anything, it would be that there's a bit of adrenaline moment or a dopamine moment right at the end when you figure out who's scored. But like there should be some kind of rule that says, oh, if you land one that touches the target ring, you have to yell something.
Or
you get
there's
or
some
it's
sort of
instant
bonus
point,
moment.
right?
Yeah.
You can't have that point taken away from you or something.
Right. Yeah.
Because that's what it needs, right? So as you said, you deconstruct games and experiences that we are all familiar with and that are already popular, and see if you can insert some of those elements, some of those little moments back into your game. And I think if I'd listened, I may listen to this episode, but if we'd recorded this episode before that guy showed up, I might even suggest to him that it just needs to have that little dopamine rush.
Right.
And I think with the long form Frisbee golf sort of things, that dopamine rush comes with your throw.
Right.
Right. You watch it arc off into the woods, or you watch it sail straight towards the target, and one way or the other, you kind of have this little rush.
Yeah. When I've got this produced, I'll send it over to you, and you can send this episode to them.
All right. And if you don't have any scorecards or anything like that, but you do have 5 dice in a cup, Google Ship Captain Crew. It's kind of a fun game too.
There we go.
And you don't have to buy it. You just need dice.
Just need dice.
You just dice and a couple of people. It's fun.
All right. Awesome.
Thanks, Steven.
All right. Thanks, David.
Thanks for listening to the podcast. Please share us, subscribe on your favorite podcast app, and leave us a big, fat, juicy 5-star rating and review. And if you have any questions about this or any other podcast episode, email to questions@theempirebuilderspodcast.com.